Word of the healing spread in whispers, passed from one sunburned face to another during water breaks and under the dull red glow of Karza-7's dying sun. Some dismissed it as hallucination, another broken mind grasping at fantasy. Others watched Elian with new eyes. 3 nights later, Sci-Fi guard drones dragged Kaya, a fellow human worker, back to the barracks. Her leg was mangled, caught in an ore hauler's undercarriage. Normally, this was a death sentence. Medical units were reserved for Sci-Fi. The humans got a cold corner and a silent death. But Elian stepped forward. He ignored the stares, the gasps, the barked Sci-Fi orders. He knelt beside Kaya and pressed the ring to her thigh. Light surged again, this time brighter. The Sci-Fi drones twitched as if detecting something foreign, but by the time they recalibrated, Kaya was screaming and then breathing. She stood, shaking, her eyes wide. The leg was whole, the wound gone. Someone muttered, "What the hell are you?" Elian rose and faced the workers crowded around him. His voice was quiet but carried like thunder through the silent chamber. "I'm still a slave, but I'm not helpless." Kaya stared at her leg. "Is it magic?" "No," Elian replied. "It's older than magic." The next day, the Sci-Fi executed 2 workers for hoarding food. They made the humans watch. The message was clear: obedience or death. Elian clenched his fists, not out of fear, but frustration. The device could heal. It could sense energy, but he didn't yet know how to fight with it. Not yet. That night, he returned to the ruins alone. He descended deeper this time, past walls of alien metal etched with flowing symbols. His ring pulsed brighter the further he walked, guiding him. At the heart of the structure, he found a chamber pulsing with raw energy. A sphere hovered above a pedestal, surrounded by fragments of strange armor and tools. "Welcome, adaptive core-compatible entity," the voice whispered inside his skull. Elian staggered. He wasn't just touching old technology. He was bonding with it. "Who built you?" he asked aloud. "We were the HFY. We sought ascension. We failed. You are viable." "What does that mean?" "You are evolution in motion. You are boundless under pressure. You are what we were not." As the core's light bathed him, Elian felt something surge through his body. Millions of data fragments, flowing into his nervous system like wildfire. Pain screamed through every nerve, then died as something new took root inside him. He didn't pass out. He expanded. When he emerged, hours later, his eyes glowed faintly. His movements were faster, more fluid. He could see the Sci-Fi drones patrol paths before they moved. He could feel the vibrations of power conduits under his feet. He wasn't a man anymore. He was a beginning. Karza-7 had always known darkness, but now something new moved within it. Elian walked through the tunnels with purpose. His senses stretched far beyond the physical. He felt vibrations in the stone. He heard whispers in the metal. He could count heartbeats through walls. The adaptive core had changed him fundamentally, but more than that, it had given him clarity. The humans were ready to rise. They just didn't know it yet. He began with the forgotten, the sick, the broken, the ones considered beyond saving. Quietly, under the cover of machinery noise and shift rotations, he used the core's gifts. He healed a man's crushed spine, restored sight to a blind girl, made a child's trembling bones whole again. These acts weren't just charity. They were recruitment. By the end of the week, a dozen had pledged themselves to him. Not as a god, but as a leader. They began calling themselves the Ascended. Every night, Elian returned to the HFY ruins, drawing more knowledge, building crude versions of the ancient tools from scavenged Sci-Fi junk. A salvaged laser drill became a railgun. A cooling coil became a shield emitter. The core didn't give power outright. It gave understanding, and that was deadlier. But the Sci-Fi were not blind forever. One morning, the overseers found a patrol drone torn in half. Not shot, ripped. Another day, a command node went offline. Its console melted down with precision plasma carving. They blamed system failures at first, then sabotage, then terrorism. They brought in purge squads. Draped in shimmering armor and equipped with mural whips, the Sci-Fi enforcers descended into the slave zones with one directive: identify and eliminate anomalies. The Ascended moved fast. They activated their first strike, an ambush in Tunnel 9, where the Zephyr didn't expect resistance. Elian stood at the front, clad in HFY armor woven into his mining gear, eyes burning like suns. "No speeches," he said. "No mercy." The purge squad rounded the corner, and the slaughter began. Kea moved like a blur, her body boosted with kinetic enhancers. She shattered a Sci-Fi's spine with a single elbow. Darren, who once couldn't walk without pain, now wielded a pulse cannon formed from core-infused scrap. The others followed suit, fast, brutal, silent. Elian didn't need a weapon. He stepped into his Sci-Fi's charge and touched its armor. The adaptive core channeled energy straight into the alien's chest, detonating it from within. 14 Sci-Fi entered Tunnel 9. None left. For the first time, a slave colony won a battle. They took the fallen armor and weapons, repaired what they could, burned the rest. Elian stood before the gathered slaves that night, eyes sweeping over their exhausted, frightened faces. "We aren't asking for freedom," he said. "We're taking it. And Karza 7 is only the beginning." From deep space, the Sci-Fi High Senate reviewed the combat reports. Their conclusion was clear. The humans were no longer manageable. The Zephyr had ruled for 1,000 years through one principle: no slave could rise. Karza 7 shattered that illusion in a single cycle. Within 2 weeks of the Purge Squad's defeat, 3 more slave colonies on Karza 7 fell under Ascended control. Surveillance outposts were destroyed. Drone launch pads sabotaged. What few orbital craft remained in working order were seized, used to send out a transmission. Elian's face, scared but alive with purpose, flickered across the screens of every Sci-Fi-run labor colony. "Greater than, you are not forgotten. You are not broken. We were made into slaves. But beneath our chains, we found something they never understood. We adapt. We survive. And now we fight. Greater than we are Ascended. And we're coming." The message was short, but it ignited the spark. Across the Sci-Fi Dominion, on frozen tundra worlds and acidic mining moons, humans rose. At first it was chaos, small cells resisting, guards vanishing in the dark, factories exploding from within. But then, coordination. From Karza 7, Elian guided them, sending encrypted pulses through modified Sci-Fi comms. His people taught others how to find the ancient tech buried under Sci-Fi facilities, relics of the HFY, long hidden, now awakened by humanity's touch. Because only humans could interface with them. The Ascended weren't just growing, they were evolving. Kea now moved at hypersonic speed for bursts, able to leap between cargo platforms and crush metal with her bare hands. Darren could manipulate energy fields, turning enemy blaster fire into shields. One woman on Trilax 2 discovered she could speak in a frequency that shattered Sci-Fi nerve receptors. The Sci-Fi called them aberrants, monsters, mutations. Elian called them the future. Back on Karza 7, the Ascended turned the ruins into a fortress, carving landing zones and refitting Zephyr dropships. Elian stood inside the central core chamber with a team of newly awakened engineers. With each activation, he felt his mind stretch farther. Networks of thought spanning like years. He wasn't just leading a rebellion anymore. He was uplinking a species. But victory didn't come without cost. A Sci-Fi fleet entered orbit 2 weeks later, massive, armed, and furious. Karza 7 had gone too far. They launched a full planetary assault, raining fire on the outer strongholds. Barracks crumbled. The first Ascended fell in battle. Elian stood atop a scorched ridge, blood on his armor, watching their defenses break. "We're not ready," Kea said beside him, eyes hollow. No, he agreed. But if we run, we die slow. If we stay, maybe we show the galaxy what humans really are. He activated his neural uplink, broadcasting to every ascended on every front. Greater than we hold, not because we must, but because we can. Make them bleed. Make them remember. Let them learn that when you cage humans, you build your own executioners. As Sci-Fi dropships roared through the sky, a dozen modified anti-grav launchers locked onto them. A moment later, the horizon exploded. The battle for Karza 7 lasted 36 hours. The Sci-Fi had expected a massacre. What they got was a war they couldn't understand. Their elite shock troopers, clad in heavy armor and armed with fusion halberds, were shredded by Ascended who could phase through solid walls, bend bullets mid-air, or disassemble enemy weapons with a glance. The ancient HFY technology, once inert relics, had become the blueprint for an uprising fueled by evolution and rage. Elian led from the front. He didn't hide in bunkers or command from afar. His core-infused armor glowed with pulsing veins of power, his footsteps cracking the ground beneath him as he moved. A Sci-Fi war beast, 30 feet tall, armored in plated obsidian, charged toward him. He didn't flinch. He leaped, drove a pulse blade into its skull, and detonated it from within. When he emerged from the smoking corpse, drenched in ash and blood, the humans behind him roared. By the end of the battle, Karza 7 belonged to the Ascended. It was the first system in Sci-Fi history to fall to a slave revolt. It would not be the last. Elian knew victory on one planet was meaningless without momentum. He turned the HFY ruins into a forge, constructing uplink beacons designed to awaken latent potential in humans across the stars. Dozens volunteered for core integration. Hundreds began showing signs of ascension, even without direct contact. They weren't just building an army anymore. They were building a new species. And they weren't alone. Other species, long crushed under Sci-Fi boot, began to take notice. The Vahari, once proud warriors, had been reduced to mercenaries and debt slaves. They reached out, offering weapons and information in exchange for a seat at Elian's table. The Skoll, a quiet insectoid race used for biolabor, pledged their hatcheries to the human cause. The Galactic underground was forming, centered around the humans. Not everyone welcomed them as saviors, but they feared them far more than they feared the Sci-Fi. On the Dominion capital world of Zifil Prime, the Sci-Fi High Senate met in emergency session. Their cold, crystalline faces flickered with confusion and contempt. "They are slaves," one barked. "Nothing more." "They are no longer slaves," another replied grimly, transmitting a video feed. It showed Elian levitating, surrounded by soldiers in armor unlike anything in Sci-Fi memory. "They are becoming something else." A third leaned forward. "Then we must act. Not just destroy them. Erase them. All of them." The Senate voted unanimously. Operation Silent Sun was authorized, an extermination protocol designed to sterilize all known human-occupied systems. They didn't care about targets, distinctions, or even survivors. They would burn entire sectors if they had to. But Elian already knew. The uplink network had grown vast. As the Sci-Fi fleet mobilized, he turned to his council. "They're bringing extinction," he said. Kea replied without hesitation. "Then let's show them what gods do to tyrants." The Sci-Fi's Operation Silent Sun ignited like wildfire. Worlds burned, orbital habitats were shattered, entire populations of humans were atomized in precision strikes. But the Zephyr had miscalculated one critical thing. Humanity wasn't running anymore. They were hunting. The Ascended struck with surgical fury, not just on Karza 7, but on slave worlds across the galaxy. Uplinked enclaves acted simultaneously, responding to Elian's encoded pulses. Every death the Sci-Fi delivered only sharpened humanity's blade. On Epsilon Core, an agricultural slave world, Ascended tactician Juno Yurik rerouted Sci-Fi terraforming beams into their own fleet's atmospheric processors, choking the invaders with their own engineered toxins. On Narsid Prime, a child barely 10 years old, awakened early by proximity to an uplink shard, caused a Zyphar armory to collapse into a singularity with nothing but instinct. What began as rebellion had become a reckoning. Inside the command chamber of the Wrath of Terra, the refitted Zyphar battleship now serving as the Ascended flagship, Elian watched a holographic map of Dominion space blink red with every new liberation. "We've destabilized 10 systems," Darren reported. "Trade routes are collapsing. Civil unrest among their outer colonies. Even some Zyphar governors are defecting." "They know they're losing," Kaya added. "That's why they're burning everything." Elian stood silent, eyes locked on the map. "We're not just going to defeat them," he said. "We're going to erase their legacy." His words weren't spoken with hate. They were spoken with resolve. In the core forge on Karza 7, human engineers completed a new prototype, the Ascension Lance, a multi-vector hyperskip drive that allowed human ships to bypass Zyphar early warning networks and strike deep inside the heart of their territory. It wasn't just fast. It was impossible by conventional physics. The first target, Zareth Station, a central control hub orbiting the Zyphar's slave logistics moon. The humans arrived without warning. No alarm, no warning signs, no fleet, just one ship. The Wrath of Terra emerged like a ghost and unleashed apocalypse. Orbital stabilizers were disabled. Docking stations ruptured. Zyphar command towers cracked open and vented their occupants into space. By the time the Zyphar mounted a response, Elian and his strike team had already left, leaving behind only a signal beacon broadcasting one phrase: "Greater than you took our freedom. Now we take your sky." Zareth Station's fall sent shockwaves through the Dominion. It was the first major Zyphar military site to fall in their core systems. But what truly terrified them came hours later. Elian appeared on Dominion-wide transmission frequencies, hijacking their secure comms. His image flickered, not in rage, but in grim certainty. "Greater than we offered you a chance to release your chains. You responded with genocide. Now your empire will be dismantled, not for vengeance, but for the future. Greater than we are no longer your slaves. We are no longer your cattle. Greater than we are what comes after tyrants. Greater than we are ascended." And across the stars, from liberated moons to war-torn ruins, a chant rose among all species. "Greater than we are ascended. We are free. We remember." The Zyphar capital, Zyphal Prime, once the jewel of the empire, now pulsed with panic. Its skies, once pristine and protected, boiled with flame as human warships slipped between dimensions, emerging from impossible angles. Gravity collapsed in pockets, lightning crawled across the surface, and entire districts sank into the ground beneath the weight of quantum implosions. The Ascended were no longer bound by physics as the Zyphar understood them. They moved like myths, fought like legends. They had become what the Empire never imagined could exist, the next dominant force in the galaxy, born from pain, rage, and impossible hope. Elian stood on the bridge of the Wrath of Terra, eyes fixed on the crumbling planet below. Around him, the command crew, human, Skull, Vahari, even former Zyphar defectors, waited in silence. "We could burn them to dust," Darren said quietly. "We should," Kaya added. "They tried to erase us." But Elian's voice was calm. "If we become what they were, then all of this means nothing." He turned away from the view and opened a channel, this time not just to Zyphal Prime, but across the entire galactic network. "Greater than Zyphar High Senate, your reign is over. Not by assassination, not by flame. Greater than but by judgment. Greater than we were taken from our home, beaten, enslaved. You tried to erase our name from the stars. Greater than instead, we became something greater. And now we offer you this. Greater than surrender your weapons, disband your fleets, submit to a galactic tribunal, or face extinction. greater than choose. There was silence on the line. Then, slowly, Sci-Fi ships began to power down. A single transmission from the High Senate followed. Greater than we. Submit. The war was over, but the ascension was just beginning. Elian disbanded the idea of an empire. There would be no throne. No single ruler. The Ascended Accord was born instead. An alliance of liberated species, guided by a shared vow. Never again would tyranny thrive in silence. The HFY technology was seeded into chosen worlds, this time not as weapons, but as tools. Devices that enhanced life, healed planets, and opened new dimensions of learning and evolution. Uplinks were no longer restricted to battlefields but woven into education, medicine, and art. Some humans became beings of pure thought, roaming quantum space and birthing new forms of reality. Others chose to remain among the people, walking as guardians and teachers. Elian Ward, once a miner, then a rebel, now a god among mortals, vanished from the public eye. His last known message was etched into a monument on Karza 7, now green with life. Greater than, we were forged in chains, tested in fire. Greater than they made us slaves. Greater than, and we became gods.